China was not a fan of that Bigfoot that I originally had set up on that chair for video purposes. I just got a text from her when she was working out in here. She was like, I don't like it. I'm like, you don't like what? She sent me a picture of that. I'm like, oh, that's for videos. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's only creepy if you stare directly at it forever.
That would be scary.
It gets me when I walk in here and turn on the lights. I'm like, oh. I had to turn the face around because Atlas was in here for a minute. Like, he walked in. I'm like, oh, shit. He wanted to actually wear the face on his walk with Gima. So I'm like, okay, no, that might terrify children in the neighborhood. We don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Christian, welcome back from your brief hiatus to the Colorado Rockies.
It's good to be back. Quick little trip.
How long were you gone? Like 3-4 days?
4 days, I think.
4 days. You know, in that let's say 5 days, I actually got about 6 months worth of videos done.
What kind of videos?
It's a new series that, you know how we were working on like desk videos and stuff like that. And I've just been putting it off because I'm like, ugh, another project. And it's actually, by the time this comes out, at least one of the episodes will be out, but it's called short form horror stories. Pretty much it's condensed videos, usually under 10 minutes, anywhere from like 5 to 15 minutes on average is what it seems like. Just detailing, you know, rundowns of specific stories and stuff like that. Surprisingly, I got them all, you know, written, shot, and edited in the time that you were away.
Nice.
And now I get to work on the other show, which is about really strange patents. And so I'm hoping that while my mom's still out here, I'll get everything taken care of with that so I don't have to worry about that until like next time she's out here, and then just record some more and do all that fun stuff. But
when are you going to throw me over there?
I don't know, whenever. We have been chugging away at getting advanced in these episodes, so it's only a matter of time. And I think the way I wanted to do it, instead of doing 2 episodes of Sleep with the Lights On a month, I just wanted to do 1 and then fill in the other spaces with different videos and stuff. And so essentially each month it's going to be a few different videos coming out if everything goes according to plan. Who's to say, really? Because I think my mom's only out here for another 3 weeks or so. So there's limited time, and it is incredibly time consuming to like do all that crap, even though it feels really good to get it done and be like, okay, at least that's off my plate. You know, we still got a couple more episodes of TFT the Musical and TFT After Dark to get done just to get further ahead, but we're in a good position right now, which is nice. Yeah.
I left work and put our album on last night.
It's a banging album, you know? That's beside the point. We've actually got, for the next couple of weeks, we have Poltergeist episodes. This week, we're kind of touching on firsthand accounts. And then next week, we're going to dive into the Enfield Poltergeist, which is, I'm sure everyone knows the story behind The Conjuring 2. And it's a pretty wild ride. And that's not even the wildest Poltergeist story that I found. I found so many more. And just over time, I'm not going to like inundate the show with 15 different Poltergeist episodes back to back to back. But the next 2 weeks are Poltergeist related. And then I'll sprinkle them in the future. And it's going to be fine. So without further ado, we will see you on the inside. You are now entering the realm of the Freaky Deaky, an unsuspecting stop at the crossroads of fantasy and reality, where the frayed edges of make-believe seep into this cookie-cutter white picket world you've been led to believe is far from extraordinary. What you're about to hear are true stories.
Alleged true stories.
Christian, just... okay? Tales of the strange and inexplicable thought only to exist in film and folklore. Although difficult to accept, we do not know everything about this reality. About time or space, what lies beneath the ocean's depths. And try though we might, the unchanging truth remains. There are some things we legitimately cannot explain logically. Folks, welcome back to the Freaky Deaky. If you are new to the show, we ask one thing of you, and that is that you listen to it in its entirety. If you're a fan of what you hear, you slap the 5-star review on that bad boy. And you can find us on social media wherever you're at. We are also at Freaky Deaky Pod. Join the Facebook group to join in the conversation. I've been really lax with responding to YouTube comments over the last couple months just because I've been doing a lot. So I've been putting off responding to YouTube comments. So if you want to talk to us, the easiest place to do that is on the Facebook group. Yeah, I'm going to try to catch up on the YouTube comments, but for the time being, the Facebook group is the spot. It is the place where you can interact with us a little easier. And we appreciate all of you. And it's still relatively small. It's under 100 members. So get in there. Get in there. Do your part.
I feel like we have to send out our condolences.
To whom? Have you prepared a statement?
No, but let me find it. Theresa. And this is going to, by the time you hear this, this is a while back.
This is going to be like 7 weeks in the future. So.
Yeah, but she had to say goodbye to her cat.
Oh, no.
So our unofficial mascot.
That is terrible.
Right.
Was that just posted today or something? Or
Yesterday.
Yeah, I haven't been on the Facebook group in like a day or two. Wow. I am so sorry to hear that, Theresa. That is very rough. Hope you are doing well.
That is rough.
That is rough. Losing animals is never a fun time.
I don't think I still haven't recovered from Bristol. And that's been like 2 years now.
What about that picture I sent you? That was wild, right?
Yeah.
I was literally scrolling and I was like, oh, Christian must have posted a picture of Bristol. And then China saw it. She's like, Bristol? And I was like, that's not Bristol. It's some other dog out here, apparently. But it's like maybe a relative of some sort. You never know. Absolutely crazy.
I feel like this is a sound. I'm going to play something.
It's probably not going to pick up very well.
No, but we should have had this sound bite because it's terrified me.
What am I listening to?
Poltergeist. The scary ass priest that I've talked about before here.
There you go. Yeah, it would have been the best soundbite to have. Instead, I guess we'll stick with this one.
Got my ass chewed.
Yeah, that works. Anyway.
I'm wondering what context that was.
Probably the exact same context as this bad boy.
Dong.
So, the archive is deep. So as I mentioned in the opening, we are diving into some poltergeist stories. In this first one, we are looking into firsthand accounts from people that have posted their experiences living with poltergeists. And then in next week's episode, we'll be touching on the Enfield poltergeist. And this is your chance, actually, to, if there's specific poltergeist experiences or stories that you are a fan of and you want to hear us cover, go ahead and comment it. If you're on YouTube, comment it, or join the Facebook group, comment in there, and I'll look into it. I've got like a list of like probably 8 to 10. Some of them a little more well-known, some of them kind of in the shadows, if you will, but all very interesting stories. With that being said, let's get into this first one, which is a weird place to start because it has a really interesting, it's called Correlations with Poltergeist Activity. And it actually sent me down another rabbit hole, which I'll get to after that. But this is from Jeannie Barkmeyer DeWitt. It's quite the name, Jeannie.
It is.
Says, I've encountered poltergeist activity twice in my life. The first time when my mom was going through menopause. From what I've been told, poltergeist activity during menopause occurs more often than people realize. The last time, a month or so after my husband's dad died. These events occurred while my husband was asleep. Lights went off and on in the house. Knocking could be heard in the walls. Sounded like someone was bouncing a basketball against the outside wall. And furniture moved. Because my husband was never awake during these episodes, he accused me of moving the furniture on my own. It wasn't until he got up during the night to let the dogs out, when he was half asleep and he experienced the tail end of some poltergeist activity, that he finally believed it was happening. This activity continued for years and didn't stop completely until my husband stopped abusing drugs and alcohol. I'll never forget the night he was hospitalized after accidentally overdosing. Activity in our home had been so bad for so long, I was terrified to return to our home alone. Amazingly, the house was completely silent and peaceful. It has more or less remained that way since he went off all drugs. The interesting correlation there was the menopause bit, right? That's kind of weird, right? And especially because she was like, it happens more often than people realize.
Makes sense to me. And then when you bring in the part about the husband, it kind of like, they almost seem connected.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's not poltergeist in both of these instances necessarily. Maybe it's something else.
I mean, it's got to be something energy then, at the very least, right?
I feel like the menopause stuff is similar to like the story Firestarter, the movie Firestarter, where this girl is like growing up and all of a sudden has all these powers. I think Carrie is similar too.
Similar, yeah.
Whereas as she's becoming a young woman and her body starts doing the things that women's bodies do, Carrie gets these.
Is it telekinesis or is it like psychic? I don't remember what they call it.
I believe it's telekinesis because she can move stuff around.
Yeah.
And that's what maybe that's the menopause thing. I mean, I can't see.
I've never heard that before, but reading the story, I'm like, damn, that's actually kind of interesting. And it would make sense if that was the case.
I mean, maybe spirits and ghosts and demons are attracted to people going through changes in their.
It's possible.
I
mean, there's a handful of stories in here where it is. And I actually looked into it further because I would love to do an episode with the correlation of anger, like arguing or just like being in a bad headspace or being like addicted to drugs and alcohol or anything like that. And its effects with like poltergeist activity. And I looked into a few. There's a couple stories in here. That's a really short one that kind of touches on that a little bit too. But it was kind of fascinating when I read that. I'm like, damn, it's like, what could that be?
It almost gives me the feeling that it's not a poltergeist, and it's like just some energy coming off the person. And in the case of the husband and the mother?
Yeah, but doesn't poltergeist just mean ghost, or like angry ghost or loud ghost or something like that?
Yeah, something like that in
Yeah,
German, right?
I think so. Yeah. So I mean, honestly, it could just be a ghost. A lot of times people are like, we have a poltergeist, and it's like, well, you just have a ghost in the house. But poltergeist does sound a lot more interesting, you know?
It does. Sounds more terrifying.
Exactly, as many German words tend to be.
I was going to try to look up poltergeist for you, but
I'm pretty sure it's German, but I could be wrong. It's never happened on the show before.
Scott,
but
you wrong?
I know, exactly. Trauma.
It's known for causing physical disturbances such as loud noises, moving objects, or other forms of kinetic activity.
Kinetic.
The term comes from the German words poltern, to make noise, and Geist.
Hey, noisy ghost. I was right. Wow.
Spirit or ghost.
Interesting. And with that, we move into this next story. This one's a little longer.
Moving is kinetic, like a poltergeist.
There you go. Yeah, everything ties together in this episode. As you can see, everything is very well researched here. All right.
It's what we do.
That is what we do. Anyway, this one is from Bambarella66.
Was Bambi a girl or a boy?
Nobody knows. Everyone focuses on the mom being shot.
I did.
Hey, who didn't?
Pour one out for moms.
Pour some down your gullet for moms. That works too. In this economy, yes. My memories of the years I lived in a haunted house from aged 8 to 18. That's a little long, but buckle up if you want to hear an actual account of actually living in one and not the Hollywood version. Me and my parents still talk about this, but I'm 30 and engaged now in my own home, and my parents moved soon after I moved out. I guess I just wanted to get it out there because it's all true, and I've tried to explain it to so many people who just don't believe it. I thought maybe this community would hear me. Well, half of this community will hear you, but the rest of them will be like, well, actually, it's the brain. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll let you know after this story.
I'm sure. This has some pretty dark parts in it, too, so everyone buckle up for that. The lady that sold my parents this house warned us of weird things going on, but my Christian parents ignored it and felt we would be fine.
Sounds typical.
Wow. Already judgy. At that time, I think they thought it was all bollocks, to be honest. British. It was a fixer-upper, but definitely a great house with lots more space than our first. Anyway, as the weeks went by, things got a bit weirder. I quickly learned when playing in the street, this was the 90s, that children in my neighborhood thought my house was haunted. And to be fair, it being an old, tall Victorian house with a rickety, overgrown Gothic pathway, it was creepy to a kid. Kind of sounds dope, actually.
Because we're adults.
That is true. And there were many horrible stories about things that happened inside. Kids wouldn't come around and play at my house due to this, and I earned a stigma being the new girl that lives in the haunted house at school. The house was 3 stories high with banisters running the entire way up, and out of nowhere, things started dropping from the top of the house to the lower landing through this banister gap. Proper poltergeist shit. Ornaments, vases, dog toys that were never upstairs. Our dogs wouldn't go up to the top of the house by the attic. All they would do is bark and whimper at the landing, and I was also absolutely terrified of the entire top floor. I was an only child, and I wouldn't go upstairs when home alone because it frightened me so damn much. All I can describe it as is as soon as the light wasn't on upstairs, I could feel a presence there with me. An angry, bitter, cold feeling like a shadow behind me getting bigger and bigger. I'd sprint as fast as I could downstairs, and strangely, even now, more than a decade on, I still have bad dreams about my legs slowing down on the final staircase like I'm running through water and something is chasing me. Those are the worst dreams. Have you ever had those?
I have.
I vividly remember one that has stuck with me from my youth, and it's me on my childhood driveway trying to get to the front door, and there's something chasing me, and it's like maybe 10, 12 feet to get to the front door, and it takes me forever because it feels like I'm running through water. And the entire time I'm like, this thing's not slowing down at all. Why am I the only one running through water here? Anyway.
Because it was all a dream.
That does make sense. I digress. So anyway, the weird stuff continued. I started knocking on a wall one evening, playing as a kid, and to my delight, it would respond to me, knocking back, responding and copying my pattern. My mom started absolutely freaking out at this when I showed her. Yeah, I bet. Running outside to demand who was knocking to her kid all night to find just a brick wall and air. No one was on the other side. On Halloween, we all heard a scream from the attic, only to brave checking it out to find it totally vacant and fine. By this point, my parents were spooked. Being religious, they brought a priest in who informed them the upstairs was very negative spiritually, and they should remodel the entirety of it to try and get the spirit out. What horrible advice. Is there one thing more common in poltergeist activity than, oops, we're renovating? That's what drudges all this stuff up most of the time. Like, hey, what are you doing in my house, bitch? And like started knocking down shit, you know?
Father Murphy did not like the interior design of the place, so he suggested a remodel.
That's just super weird. You would think that priests would be kin to that. They'd be like, oh, you know, I don't think, maybe definitely don't change anything in the house. That's the first start, you know?
That was a very progressive priest.
Yeah. He's like, you know what I think we need? More wallpaper.
The color's off here, the color scheme. I don't think the poltergeist likes it.
Yeah, as a priest that, before he went into the church, was interior designer. It was my dream as a child.
He was probably like, you need a remodel. Let me give you the number of my brother.
There you go.
Who is not a priest.
Very true.
To fix up your house.
Absolutely.
10% cut, though.
He told them to gut the attic, bless the area, and ask the spirit to leave. Okie dokie.
Have you ever heard it? I've never heard of a priest doing this before.
Are you sure that was a priest and not like a weird shaman or something like that came in with?
I know. I met this guy at the church and he was wearing the getup and I was like,
where was he? He was in the parking lot selling seashells, if you can believe it. What a find. So they began to remodel the attic into a bedroom, bathroom, etc. The spirit did not like this. At one point, my father claims his leg was pulled through the floor, and sure enough, his leg went through the floor into the downstairs bathroom ceiling. Later, we had a guest in a separate part of the house. All of a sudden, part of the ceiling fell on his head for absolutely no reason. The builders said it was a complete fluke and didn't make sense. On the last night of converting the attic, I had the worst dream of my life, which I will never forget. My bedroom was an ensuite, so it had 2 doors and both were heavy on hinges. Like you couldn't open them without pushing down on the handle, just for reference. So this dream, I was watching a man and woman argue. The woman was wearing Victorian clothes. I likened them to Oliver, the musical characters at the time. And the man was in a gentleman's suit. They were arguing back and forth, and I couldn't make out their words clearly, like I was listening underwater. She suddenly looked at me straight in the eyes and started screaming and pointing to the floor. Now, trigger warning, because this was terrifying to see as a kid in a dream and nothing I'd ever seen in any film or TV show at that age. On the floor was a dead baby, face down. I woke up hyperventilating in bed thinking it was all over when I looked down at my own bedroom floor to see the same dead baby, but it was crying and contorting. The woman slammed open my bathroom door, the one on hinges, and ran across my room and out the other door. Both my doors were literally swinging, which was physically impossible without someone standing doing it, and all I could hear was screams and cries. I screamed and woke up again to my mom shouting for me to wake up, saying she could hear a racket of slamming doors upstairs, but when she checked, I was tucked up in bed, just tossing and turning. I told her my dream, and she told me to come sleep with her. Years later, when I was old enough, she admitted to me that they did research on the house after the priest's visit and found information that a maid had been pregnant by the housemaster and forced to kill or abort the baby in the attic. My mom, being spiritual but also Christian, said she had tried to make peace with this spirit after learning this. Nuts, right? This is just a sprinkling of the crazy things that happened over the years in that house. But I bet you're wondering if the conversion, etc. worked. Well, interestingly, it did for us. We were all able to sleep very happily in the new guest room and no more poltergeist stuff went on. Wow, weird. Priest got it right. That's the first time I've ever heard of renovations being good for like a haunted house.
Remind me to come back to that. I have a theory.
I bet you do. There was still an eerie energy in the loft conversion, but not a threat. It kind of never felt like it was our home, but I'm not sure if old houses ever do. I will say the dogs stood firm and hated the upstairs the entire time we lived there. They never accepted it and would still bark. So nothing really weird happened until years later when I was 17 and I got a new boyfriend who was awful and abusive in the end. But anyway, we were staying in the converted bedroom up there while I was home from university.
Sinners.
I never had told him of any of the stories of the house as we were very new to dating. Anyway, we went to bed, watched a movie, and fell asleep. I was woken to him screaming, saying a Victorian woman was standing over me watching me sleep, and told him very aggressively that he needs to leave. I kind of didn't mind that. She had good judgment on him. So yeah, there it is. I didn't believe in ghosts until I lived with one for 10 years. Wow.
The Victorian ghost was upset that they were sinning.
protective at the end there, though.
Yeah.
Like, hey, get this asshole out of your bed.
Yeah. I'm dressed this way. I'm going to act this way.
There you go.
Victorian, here we go.
That's pretty wild, though. That's a wild ride.
It makes me wonder about so let's just say renovations work. If they work, why?
Right. Maybe the ghost is there, like, when it looks all modern and new, he's like, wait a second, this isn't my house. What is this?
I think that's what we would say it is, or what we'd put in film, maybe.
Sure.
But to me, maybe whatever energy is working through this house kind of gets a little bit thrown off or dissipated by the renovations. And I can't tell you how that works scientifically or mathematically.
Nobody can.
You know, there's magic in math sometimes. So maybe however the place was built before kept this energy inside and just kept repeating it. And when they remodeled, that energy kind of dissipates in a different way. So maybe you can't pick up on it quite the same way. But the dogs obviously picked up on something that's still there.
Yeah. Like it never truly went away, but they just didn't have as many experiences after the renovations.
Like it damaged the recording. And I'm sure if we went back to like cassette tape days, there's certain things you would do when you recorded something that could damage it, you know, as simple as having a magnet near it or something like that.
That is true. Tough times when you're clinging to the radio, being like, oh, the song's coming on, quick, get it.
That was my life as a child, my little tape recorder.
Mine too, man.
I would play DJ and announce the songs.
I'd be waiting for Blue by Eiffel 65 to come on the radio at like 6 years old to be like, let's do it, man. Let's get this on tape.
All right. 6 years old, I can accept that.
Yeah, I think that was probably the first album that I had gotten from someone at school. Because obviously I wasn't going to get it from my parents or whatever. It wasn't Creed or worship music. So very limited options there.
I don't know what the fuck is going on with the universe. Isn't
it weird that it seems like our Facebook group has like spiraled into a Creed fan page?
Well, and it's not just that, because then I get back to work after being off a few days, and all of a sudden it's like they're just laughing at me when a Creed song comes on.
They're just playing Human Clay back to back to back, and you're like, oh God, can I do this?
And then they really laughed when Nickelback came on the playlist.
Wow, classic. Yeah, it is interesting. The cycles that our Facebook group goes through based on weird jokes that we have on the show. Like there's times where it's all about beans. And then most recently, out of nowhere, to be honest, a complete surprise. It was just full of Creed posts. I'm like, wow, you guys really, really clinging to that, huh?
The universe is testing me right now.
We'll see. 6 weeks from now when this bad boy comes out, maybe the Creed has subsided and maybe it's something else.
Dong.
That'd be weird. I don't want to see that on the Facebook group. No thanks. Keep that to yourselves, all right? Anyway, yeah, I like that story a lot. The dream was terrifying. Like the dream within a dream. No, if I saw that, like it almost reminded me of that one story we were reading. I think it was in a witchcraft episode. The person found out that they did the spell wrong, and then they noticed the shadow on like sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor, flop down and be dragged under the bed. Not for me. Not for me. I'm glad I don't see that crazy shit, you know? Like I've seen crazy things, but nothing to that extent, because that would scar me for life. I'm certain of it.
That would be pretty rough. But that also, the housemaster thing, getting with the help, like,
hell yeah.
Like the good Christian men of the past used to do.
I mean, it's weird to call them Christians because that was the old days. You know, we don't know what they were. They could have been.
It was more like they were more than likely Christians in the old days than now. But either way, it's kind of a joke. But it was like those upstanding pillars of society doing stuff to the help all the time. And
is it really that much different from these days? I mean, what it boils down to is money and power. You know,
I think these days the only difference is now when this happens, people are like, humans, man.
Classic.
But back then it was more of a shock, I think, to people to admit.
There's like, I have never.
They would do that while they were doing the help.
Doing the help. Classic stuff, really.
Good buddy down the street or down the other part of town, I don't know if they called him down the street back then, was doing the same thing. And that's when that man gets all judgy, like, oh my gosh, how dare he?
Disgusting. Sir, think about your life choices.
And then they get to the men's club and they all just talk about it.
You're like, hey, remember when we were all banging our maids? Isn't that fun? High fives.
Did you bang my maid? I banged your maid.
Wow. Just a big old maid orgy. That's what you need.
Dong.
And that concludes the maid orgy bit. This next story, if I may, it's called Heavy Breathing Intensifies.
Oh, we're back to the maids.
Not quite. And it's by Zaskia cultus. One day, I was up in my bedroom doing my first homework for school, and there was this old PVC plastic-covered self-assembly type wardrobe with a door that had a broken zipper, so the top corner of it hung down, and you could see inside the upper half. There I was, scribbling away in my book, when I noticed my breathing seemed strangely heavy and loud. I held my breath, and the breathing continued, coming from the direction of said wardrobe. I shot down those stairs like a dose of salts and told my mom.
Like a what?
A dose of salts. I was hoping that you would understand what that meant. Is it like sniffing salts? When you get like all like, I've never heard that term before, but
I will, as you're reading it, I will try to figure out what that term is.
There you go. I shot down those stairs like a dose of salts and told my mom, who said I was imagining things. I was 8 years old at the time, but years later in my 40s, she told me that when I was really young, she used to get me to sleep with her in her bed when my dad worked nights because she heard it too and it terrified her. My sisters also told me they heard it too, and the wardrobe always creeped them out. Took them long enough to tell me I wasn't imagining it, though I knew it really happened anyway. That's creepy. No, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Is this going to be really bad?
No. The phrase, like a dose of salts, which is often pluralized as a dose of salt, originates from the 19th century, so the 1800s. It refers to the use of Epsom salts or similar, I get it, purgatives, which were administered to induce rapid bowel movements.
Oh, ugh. Wow.
The idea is that something happening like a dose of salts means it occurs quickly and with urgency, much like the effect of the salts on the body.
Wow. Well, I wish I actually didn't know what that meant now. I wish I could go on with my life just being like, oh, maybe he just got an adrenaline rush from some sniffing salts. It woke him up and he's like, I gotta go.
No, it's like puking salts.
Great.
Diarrhea salts.
Diarrhea salts. Anyway.
We've been very informative this morning.
Yep. Sometimes not in the best ways, you know?
It's always fascinating to hear old sayings that you just kind of listen to all your life, and then to look into them a little bit and you're like, whoa, that is really weird.
You're like, that is not what I expected it to mean. And now I'm terrified. Thanks, Internet. You've done it again.
People are like, I want to go back to the old days where everything was simpler and shit like that.
No,
when you were
not.
sick, they gave you a dose of salt. So
Yeah. Was that you just take a spoonful of Epsom salt at that point? Like, what is that even, you know?
You know what's funny is when I was reading that, all of a sudden I remembered being a kid and hearing like grandparents talk about doing stuff like that with Epsom salt. I thought you just soaked your feet in it.
Yeah, I thought it was like a bath thing.
Yeah, I didn't know you ingested it to throw up.
Weird. Have explosive diarrhea, turns out.
Yeah.
Both of those not really great. How do you know which of the two is going to happen? What if you're like, oh, I'm really constipated, let me take a dose of salts, and then you end up throwing up all over the place?
Yeah, you just hang out in the Victorian outhouse or bathroom, I guess, if it's Victorian.
Or just the backyard. Hey, do whatever you want. It's your property.
Poor people, it was the backyard or whatever. But for the people, the Victorians, they had houses.
Oh, yeah.
And the money to buy Epsom salts.
Yeah.
Takes me back to the days of like, hey, you got a cough? Here's some cocaine in your cough medicine.
You're like, I feel great suddenly. What happened?
Can I have some more?
This is a miracle drug.
Mommy, give me more cough medicine. Said no kid ever, except for in the late 1800s.
Except for my son, who says it constantly.
Well, actually, now they make it taste a lot better.
Exactly. And that's what I think it is. Because yesterday, I mean, he ate a lot, but he was sitting there and he was like, need medicine. I'm like, no, you don't. You're fine. He's like, not feeling well, need medicine. I'm like, I think you're confusing vitamins, your like immune support vitamins with medicine. I was like, medicine when you're sick and coughing and have a sore throat and stuff, vitamins willy-nilly throughout the day, technically. So yeah, don't just go around saying you need medicine all the time because that's going to make us look very bad.
But also, the medicine looks the same as vitamins.
It really does. Yeah, it's all on a syringe for him. So whatever works for you, champ. All right, this next story is called 9 Months, and it's by Bright Skies 2094. It has nothing to do with pregnancy.
Oh.
It's just a span of time, you know? So I was pregnant. No, I'm just kidding. I experienced poltergeist activity on and off for about 9 months. There's the span of time.
Maybe it does have to deal with it. We'll discuss at the end of the story, see if we can tie it back to something like that.
Okay. It came in waves. It would peak, then diminish, then peak, then diminish throughout 9 months.
Morning sickness.
And this is also a man writing the story. So
in this life.
In in 2020, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go there. It's fine. The lower activity was objects disappearing, reappearing at random places, lights turning off. For example, I left my bedroom to pick something up from the kitchen, and when I went back, the lights were turned off. Bathroom shampoo bottles being placed oddly on the bathtub floor, etc., and many variations of just strange things that I definitely wouldn't do. The peak activities were a little more scary. Objects crashing and falling during the middle of the night, lights flickering, audible moans, walls vibrating or roaring. When these happened, I usually left the house and slept at a friend's or in my car. I just didn't want to deal with it. I was absolutely distraught during these entire 9 months, though. In hindsight, I am unsure still about what exactly poltergeist phenomena is. I can tell you that in my case, I was an adult male working a full-time job, but I was going through some pretty strong emotional downs and depression, and also facing some really strong trauma and having to work through it. The poltergeist activity coincided pretty well with this emotional state. I have heard that it could just be psychokinesis, aka I was projecting, but I have been down and depressed before, but never with accompanying poltergeist activity. I now think that maybe it's a mix of being in a vulnerable state and then having something from, quote, the other mess with you. Good news is, after I worked through my traumas, strengthened my faith in God, and moved closer to my loved ones, I have seen all of these activities cease. So there's definitely a relationship with all these factors. And so we're back to the emotional state, right?
Back to Carrie.
Yeah, and like the psychokinesis or whatever is an interesting theory. I don't know, man. That seems weirder to me than ghosts. The fact that your own emotional state is projecting just crazy chaos into the world around you and terrifying you in the process.
I think emotional state has something to do with it. But if you're doing this, then there's something affecting your consciousness, is what I would say.
Possibly.
Because, well, it makes sense to me. I'm more into believing that the telekinesis type of stuff could happen than the ghost stuff, if that makes sense.
But wouldn't it be immediately canceled out by the fact that just a lot of the times it has to do with location, you know? And so you can have severe depression, anxiety, and all these things, and you can experience crazy, like the walls vibrating and moaning. I don't even want to know what that sounds, or what roaring is what it said. Like, I don't even want to know what that sounds like. That sounds terrifying, you know, but you can have that in one location and you can still have those feelings in a different location or different residence and nothing happens. So doesn't that automatically cancel out the fact that it's just psychokinetic or anything like that, because it can't be replicated wherever you are in whatever living situation you're at? Because I've personally suffered from, I suffer from high anxiety all the time. I've suffered from depression nonstop. I've never had anything like that outside of, my parents' house and in Vegas and a couple times out here, but nothing crazy like it was in my youth. So I don't see the correlation there between it being all in your mind or you projecting if it can't be replicated scientifically, right? It's about replication.
That's one of the problems with these topics.
So I just don't see how that can be the case if you can't do it wherever you're at,
Well, if these things do happen, it can be replicated, but we haven't figured out how to do it yet, which is kind of a problem. Like
I don't know.
We haven't figured out, we don't have the technology to be able to replicate the different settings and situations right now. But
you do, because you're just existing. All the settings and situation are is you existing with your traumas.
Yes, but we all handle our traumas differently, and they all manifest differently in our lives for each and every one of us. There's no, unfortunately, and especially for a lot of people that want everything to happen the same for everybody, however we process that stuff is going to be different for each and every one of us. And how it affects your environment and your brain and your mentality is going to be different.
So you're just going to brush aside the location.
I think a location has something to do with it. I'm not sure whether it's like the renovated attic earlier. If the mathematics of the setting or the location are right in these situations, you may pick up on stuff. If you're in an emotional state, this person sounds like they were in a weird place for at least 9 months, and all this stuff happened. And once they kind of got to a better place, it didn't quite happen the same. So to me, it just feels like something in your consciousness is affecting the environment around you. I'm not sure how. Obviously, nobody that tells these stories can really explain how. We have theories and thoughts and beliefs on what's affecting it, but we can't really narrow it down. And it sounds like while the stories are generally similar, they're all kind of individual to the person experiencing them.
My personal thought on this is you have a location, in this case, an apartment complex or whatever. You experience crazy shit happening within your apartment. And in this heightened time frame, when things get crazy, you either sleep in your car or you go stay with a friend, right? And then things don't happen in your car or with your friend. So right there, I can cancel out that it's not happening outside of this apartment.
Right.
Inside the apartment, you don't know what took place there, quote unquote, charged the area or something like that with some kind of supernatural, whatever, energy, demons, spirits, whatever you want to call it. But there is a lot of theories with these things that I'm not even, just so I don't trigger you, I'm not even going to say demons, but there's a lot of theories behind the fact that spirits can feed on your energy, right? And can feed off of you, right?
Right.
And so if they are in a situation where you are, let's say, suffering from depression or anxiety, that just feeds them. They feed off of that.
That seems like a theory that is out there.
But it's not even as far out there as like, it's all in your brain, because it's isolated to a specific area.
If it was all in your brain, it wouldn't be manifesting as a poltergeist, is kind of what I'm saying. Some of this is outside of your brain, whether you're making it happen or an actual spirit or demon is making it happen. So, I mean, I've heard the dark part of it, but as I'm getting older and looking back at all these types of things I've always been fascinated with, which, is the supernatural. I don't know, man. It's just, demons are real.
You know what? I think you might be onto something.
It would be easier if they were, right? Instead of sitting here arguing about.
It's easier, because at that point, then you're like, well, shit, now I got to deal with this.
I mean,
now I got to figure out demon logic. I mean, I guess that is easier because there's an entire guide to that shit. But
and let's be honest, in this world, the way we have to live our lives, we don't have time for demons. So even if demons are real, it's going to go down the list after paying the bills and
taxes.
Yeah,
I'll deal with the demons after taxes, after the government bends me over a countertop again. Trauma.
But sometimes I do think some of these manifestations come from us. And I would like to know, is there a spiritual aspect to it, a demonic aspect? Is it just the way our hormones are interacting with our subconscious? I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think there is. And actually, you know who broke it down for me it's a really interesting, to me, it's fascinating because I thought the two worlds could never collide. But I think there is an aspect to it to where whatever from a spiritual perspective, whatever you let into your life can also kind of manipulate your emotions on things. It can heighten your anxiety, can heighten certain things. And if you get rid of that, then you're on a path to like a clearer mind or something like that, right? And so these things can toy with your emotions and make you think or be paranoid about certain things or more scared of certain things when you shouldn't be. And it's all just kind of a facade that they put on before you or convince you in your own head that this is happening. I can't remember exactly the phrasing that was used, but you've probably seen it. There's a YouTube channel called Delafe Testimonies where it's literally just one camera on a dude sharing their experience of how they came to Jesus or whatever, right? Really, and it's a really well-produced show. But there was this one I watched probably maybe earlier this year or something, and it was of this dude that he joined the military. And then he randomly, when he got out, he started selling drugs. And he got to the point where he was almost like this kingpin where he had traveled to different areas and he wanted to heighten his consciousness or whatever. And he was on the search for like the supreme being of the universe. And so he did shamanism. He was taken under the wing of someone, I think in Brazil or something like that, all the while building this drug empire, right? And then he eventually gets to the point where he's like screaming at the ocean that he just wants to know the true power of the universe. He doesn't know what it is, whatever, but he ends up coming to Jesus, right? Now he's a pastor. He's got a podcast and all this shit. And you know me, I watch like some crypto YouTubers and stuff, right? I found this one dude a few weeks ago. I guess there's a couple Christian crypto guys, but for the most part, it's just people being like, this is how you make money. And I found this one guy and he has a giant backlit cross in his videos. I'm like, damn, that is taking it to the next level. And in one of his videos, he was like, yeah, if you want to hear my testimony, like how I came to Jesus in 2019, whatever, I had millions of dollars, had all this stuff, had no fulfillment in my life. And I decided to look into Jesus and gave my life to Christ, right?
Actually, yeah, I don't want to listen to his testimony.
Exactly. I did, though, because I was fascinated. He has like a really interesting take on the markets. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to look that up. And it ended up being the same guy that was in that testimony. It was his podcast that he was on. And not only that, he's the dude's brother. Like, I found these guys completely separately, years or months apart. And the stories that he was talking about correlated with the stuff that his brother had said in the testimony and stuff that sounded wild and outlandish, where I'm like, there's no freaking way that was happening. He mentioned somewhere in that video that, you know, when you open doors to certain things, like let's say, you know, love of money or something like that, that when you put all your heart into something like that, that it has the ability to affect you and manipulate you in ways that could make you paranoid. It could make you freak out or anxious or anything like that. When in reality, you got to let all that stuff go. And so I think that could be a similar situation with, you know, when you're dealing with poltergeists and stuff like that, is you're feeding into this. And so it's getting stronger off of that instead of you just being like, you know what? No. Because I read one story. I don't think it was even in this episode, but they mentioned that they had heard somewhere that you just need to treat it like a misbehaving child. And so she was like, I just ended up screaming at this thing when it threw something across the room and it stopped.
That's how you handle your child, screaming at it.
A stern talking to like, well, now, Mr. Poltergeist, don't you dare. But yeah, from that point on, it stopped. I was like, damn, does it actually work? You know, someone throws something, you're like, I will kill you, ghost. And they're like, oh shit, this guy's serious. No thanks. You know?
I don't know, man. I don't know if I can get on. I'm not going to compare poltergeist activity with like a person making bad choices and thinking dark thoughts.
You don't think there's any
correlation there? It to demonic forces or dark forces, because they're not.
Great game.
They're not in the Christian mindset like they should, which
it doesn't even have to be. I'm not removing it from Christian mindset.
I will too in this case, because the headspace. The problem is, though, if you have that like Judeo-Christian belief that we do in this country, it's really easy for us to get in a weird mind space and then make it about like Christianity in this case, or religion, when sometimes you're just in a bad mind space. And if you're manifesting things,
that's your first mistake.
I don't necessarily know if it's a demon, because we were talking earlier about this stuff, or if it's just you manifesting things or interpreting things a certain way because you're in a dark place. You're selling drugs. You know, you got a crypto channel, so you're trying to do the capitalist thing, which is not Christian at all anyway. I mean, but we do
it depends on what you do with the money, but sure.
I mean, generally it's not.
Most people fall.
And yes. I'm not gonna knock capitalism, because I think it's
essential.
The best system the closest to working we have right now. I'm not going to say it's the best, it's the worst. You can argue about that all day long. It's just, there's opportunity in it, and there's a lot of crap, but I don't know where I'm going with this. But either way, mental could be mental stuff.
Could be mental stuff. Great point.
Could be just people wanting to put a label on something that they created, which is when these people are, and you probably hear about it more than me because you watch people testifying about their finding Jesus maybe, and they have some crazy stories like that sometimes. And I'm like,
sometimes some of them are mild,
but some of these people were just bad people to begin with.
Sure.
And
doesn't that make it more,
or maybe not bad people, just making bad decisions, or just having a bad focus? Because
borderline bad people. we could. I mean, bad decisions. You're getting into like a socio topic where it's kind of hard to differentiate between bad and just bad decisions. Are there bad people making bad decisions? Yes. Are there good people making bad decisions? Yes. But
I think I try not to. And I'm sure I do it here sometimes, but I try not to live my life thinking there's very many bad people just because they make bad decisions, if that makes sense. I think it's really dangerous to call. All the time. Yeah, I think it's dangerous to call any people bad. It's
Well,
just
you're
a bad
speaking that on them.
yeah. It's just a bad mental space, and maybe you'll draw in poltergeists or demons in the end.
It could.
And then either way, you're judging somebody, which seems actually not the way to be.
When you don't have all the information and you're just making judgments based off a few paragraphs you saw online, or like someone making a video for 10 minutes and being like, oh, that guy seems like a moron. You really don't have enough information to make that call, and it's not your call to make. You know?
Now our brain is set up in a way that it's going to try to judge that situation or that person, but sometimes you got to
say, no, I will not.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a natural process for us to judge things like that or make assumptions, but it's just not a healthy place, and maybe you'll get poltergeist.
Maybe. You know, I'm surprised that I haven't experienced wild poltergeist activity just based on my own mental space.
Yeah, you're pretty
I go all over the map with it. Like, and I'm sure there's people out there that would look at me and be like, oh, that man is bipolar, or that man is schizophrenic, or that man is whatever.
No, you just stress.
What is it, ADHD? What's the one where people just talk a mile a minute and then get nowhere? Is that ADD? Maybe I have ADD. ADHD? Who knows? I was born in the 90s. Whatever was fucking kids up back then probably got me too. And that's fine. That's fine. Those videos, the short form horror stories, they fluctuate. Let me tell you, there's some, it's not just paranormal, but there's some that are like very serious. And then there's some where I'm like joking half of the time. And I'm like, wow, people are gonna, it's a wild ride. It's a wild ride. I think the one that's probably going to be the weirdest is the McMartin PreSchool trials. Do you remember that?
How dare you not have me on to discuss that?
This is just short form. Like I said, like there's even some stuff. I think I did one for Enfield Poltergeist too, which we're doing an entire episode on right now. So there's going to be stuff where I talk on it. And then the idea is I want people, if they really like that topic, to be like, yo, you need to do a whole episode on this because this is all condensed. But that one is such a fun one because you see like the crazy mania of people that are like, look at all this crazy shit going on. And the poor dude that's like accused of all this, his mom and his like grandma or whatever, whoever the, I forget, the principal of the preschool was that had to go through all that shit. I'm like, damn, I would honestly just leave the country. If that was happening to me, I'd be like, okay, you guys are absolutely nuts. I need to go away.
You're telling me about a story that I actually grew up watching.
Mm-hmm.
That's psychotic craziness that was going on then.
Mm-hmm. It was a wild ride. And like I said, that doesn't really, it's got like, you know, satanic ritual abuse undertones, but overall it's just a wild story. It's not paranormal in nature. Nothing paranormal happened.
Hey, that was the height of the satanic panic.
It was. There you have it. And
people are like, Satan. It's all Satan. It's not, has nothing to do with my bad decisions.
Underground tunnels, freaking the whole nine, man. Like everything I read about that story, I'm like, damn, these people were insane.
It's funny that people sometimes still, when they want to talk about Satan, they'll bring up some of that stuff. And I'm like, that was a bunch of BS.
If we're talking Satan and Satanism, like that is about as far from reality as you can get in that story.
That was the whole satanic panic.
I know, but what I'm saying is that kind of muddies the water because there are certain like stories where you have, you know, SRA and stuff like that to where satanic ritual abuse and like Satanism and stuff like that is actually being quote unquote used. In this story, none of that was actually happening. It was all just fabricated.
I'm still fascinated by the people that think that that's happening every day all over the place, and there's this big group of people that have all this power doing it. I just laugh at that. But that's for another subject. Let's get back to
we only have one. We only have one short story, but I will say that your skepticism on satanic rituals or anything taking place at all is very unbecoming. Like you can't say that it because
I'm not saying it doesn't happen at all. I'm just not saying
there's a lot of creepy stuff associated with it, and like people that aren't even religious or anything that stumble upon this stuff and like, whoa, what the fuck did I just see? My favorite probably being that one. I think it was like a snake catcher or something like that, being on Rogan, and Rogan asked him what the craziest thing that's ever happened to him was, and him talking about he got permission from the city to go and remove snakes from this abandoned warehouse or something like that. And him running into pretty much like a lot of symbolism and stuff like that associated with Satanism.
It is an abandoned warehouse.
Yes. So it's obviously going to be a rave den and all that fun stuff. But finding, you know, creepy dolls that have symbols on them and stuff. And then this same doll later on grabbing him in the video and stuff. And like, this isn't a religious dude at all. He was like, I'm not a believer in all that stuff, but this did freak me out to my core when I experienced this at this warehouse. And so I think there are situations where these things happen and it is meant to be worship of Satan or whatever, you know, and you may not believe that anything can come from that, but a lot of people in the world do believe that something can come from that, myself included.
I mean, in this episode, we have things happening because of the mental place people are in.
The mental place.
So if they're out there like hail Satan kind of crap, they're going to be in a bad mental space. Now they're going to be a little disappointed to find out that there's no Satan or no devil. I am wrong.
Wow.
But
Christian,
whatever, man, whatever.
Your ignorance is showing, but that's fine. We're going to go ahead and get in this last story. This is the short one that also has to do with temperament.
Just a little short one. Bringing it back.
A little short one. It's called Table Flip.
Oh, I wonder what's going to happen.
So I flipped a table. No. 10-ish years ago, my dad and I were arguing about my high school parking pass. Weird flex. And a table in the middle of the kitchen just slammed to the ground. No windows open, no doors open, no one else in the house, shutting doors and causing air pressure. Cat was upstairs, no associated gusts of wind, just the table falling to the ground as if someone walked up to it and abruptly pushed it over with their arm.
I like how they said the air pressure thing, like anybody's ever seen air pressure flip a table over.
Yeah, I've seen it open doors. That's about the extent of it.
Yeah, maybe some paper falls off the table when you open the door.
Turns out most tables are pretty steady, unless it's built by a poor craftsman.
Unless there's a poltergeist around.
Apparently. Just the table falling to the ground as if someone walked up to it and abruptly pushed it over with their arm. My dad was looking right at it, and I glanced over in time to see it fall too.
Fucking dad's a Jedi.
That's just bizarre, man. Like the fact that you're sitting there arguing with your son, and then just randomly the table flips over to the ground. And you're like,
did you realize when you put this together that every story was going to have an heightened?
I'm not sure every story did. Most of them,
a heightened emotional place in some way.
That's why I said I kind of wanted to look into it maybe in the future of like a correlation between the two, between you being in like heated arguments or like just in a mood or anything like that, and the correlation of that between ghost activity, poltergeist activity, and that stuff. Like I think it's fascinating to think about, and I'm not sure. Maybe people have looked into that before, but I haven't personally seen anyone come together with something like that.
I feel like this is almost, and maybe it's just the stories that we have for this episode, but it's almost a good reminder to get your
pet spayed and neutered.
Yes, like Bob Barker said.
All right, babe.
Like it's just like lessons. I don't know what the right word would be. It's just teachings that we need to get our mind under control. Like maybe that's why I don't get to see the things you've seen, because I'm generally
because your mind is more controlled.
No,
than mine.
I'm just
Thanks, Christian.
I think my general thoughts during the day are healthier than a lot of people's, or less stressed.
Are they healthier or are they more aloof?
I'm sure they're aloof to a certain point.
Because you don't stress out about things, but do you like really grasp the severity of situations?
I do, but
you just like brush it off kind of thing?
I think once the severity hits, I'm more like, okay, now I just got to get through it. It's my own fault or some shit like that. Yeah. But I just don't think I have that level. I don't go as dark as quickly as a lot of people, and that helps me in a lot of ways. Might make me aloof at times.
I mean, if it works, there's no fault in that.
It's not the right way or the wrong way. It's just.
Does it trigger you into hours-long bouts with anxiety?
That it does not. So
well, there you go. It must be working all right.
It's. So I don't know. Maybe that could be the correlation, and that's why I think when people are trying to figure this stuff out, they leave a lot of things, on the cutting room floor that might help them figure it out. Like, where is your mental state while you're going through this? You hear about it a lot when you really listen to the stories or when we tell the stories. A lot of times there's something else going on in this person's life.
True. Yeah. And stuff that maybe they don't even think about including because they're like, oh, it's irrelevant.
Which could be a reason why something like religion and Jesus helps, because it does bring you to a place where you're maybe if you're doing it right, it's less about you at that point. So that takes a lot of stress off. The things that cause us stress are when it's more about us and how we have to be a certain way or do a certain thing. And we beat ourselves up over it and put ourselves in a bad space.
You would be surprised, though, that most of the time people that come to Jesus are met with even more troubling stuff. They just handle it better because they know that it's out of their hands and they give it to someone else.
Sometimes I think because you have this belief of what I feel about, say, Christianity or religion, that I don't kind of get that stuff. But yeah, when you're making a transition or a change, or you're moving toward a better place, there's going to be challenges. And maybe those challenges were there no matter what. You're just noticing them. Maybe that's the universe being like, are you sure you want to be a better person? Here's some cocaine.
But see, calling it the universe, that's, I don't know, it's weird. I know it's a generalization.
When I call it a universe, it leaves it open for people that think that universe is more about, their choice of deity or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. Leave it open to the new age. It's fine.
And not new age. I mean, it can be any of the religions.
Universe is pretty new agey if you think the universe is doing stuff for you.
It's just a word.
It is a word that implies new age.
And I would assume that most people, if you're new to the podcast, maybe not, but if you've been around for a while, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm leaving it open. For Scott, it's going to be God. For me, it's like, I don't know what it is, but basically that's what it is. You're putting some of your problems in the hands of
the new age.
Well, no, for your reference in God and Jesus, and that takes some of the pressure off. But most Christians still struggle with that. And sometimes worse, because they got a lot of other things coming at them from their perspective, or the rules that were set in place later on by men cause them a lot of trauma, and maybe separate them from the source that they're trying to get closer to.
I don't know, man. I don't know. All I know personally, I feel stuff. I'm not someone that feels stuff a lot, but there is a wild contrast between living in the quote unquote world, or for the world, or wherever churches say now, and, actually
we are the world.
There you go. And actually having a relationship with what you consider to be the creator of the universe. Like there is I know you think it's all just like in your head or whatever, but there's a physical
what do I think's
shift
in your head?
Like belief. You think that, like, if I told you that I had actual experiences that are unexplainable to anyone, I could go down a list of things that have happened to me that personally prove the existence of my beliefs. You would say, well, yeah, that's, confirmation bias on your own part.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, you'd say that it's because I believe these things that in my head it's happening due to that I'm just focused on this thing, so it must be that thing. But there's an actual physical shift within me that I can't even really get it into words properly to explain it to people. But it's something that all I can ever say is you have to experience it to fully understand it.
I feel like when I said earlier, kind of, if your headspace is healthy, you are going to have a physical change. So if your headspace, and let's face it, a lot of having that faith, is a path to having your headspace in a better place.
Sure, but even for someone like myself who doesn't have my headspace in a good spot most of the time, I can still, regardless of how down I get, how low I get, I can still find solace in the fact that I'm not alone in that. I don't have to be in the perfect headspace. I'm not a perfect person. I've never been in a perfect headspace. I've always had issues. But even in those moments, if I pray, then I legitimately feel better. I'm not someone that cries, but I can legitimately sit down, pray, and start crying for 20 minutes straight because I'm literally talking to someone, responding to me.
But science you can put somebody in machines and see that when somebody starts praying, those changes happen.
Yes, it changes brain chemistry and all that fun stuff.
So
there's something to it. I know it's open for debate.
When I say mental space, there's no such thing as a perfect mental space. When you're watching your YouTube channels and some guru comes on and tries to convince you that their way of thinking is makes them healthy and happy, whether they're what's his name? The big Tony something guy that was famous in the 90s that you could buy it.
Robbins?
Yeah.
Robbins,
You could buy or buy his cassettes for $1,000 so he could live in his castle in San Diego.
Record, he's still very famous now.
He is still famous. Yeah. His name slipped my mind.
Yeah.
Now I forgot where I was going with that.
That's fine.
But either way, just keep your headspace as good as you can. Try to focus on the good.
Yeah.
Every once in a while. We all
it's
focus.
Hard, but get there.
Maybe that's what I'm saying is sometimes when things are rough, I try to find something that's good and that helps.
Usually it's Krispy Kreme, but that's fine.
It's not Krispy Kreme.
It's not, especially out here, it's not that great, but that's fine. Guys, we're just rambling at this point about religion for the 400th time on this podcast. And it's fine, it's cool. If you guys don't like it, you probably tuned out by now anyway. So who am I talking to? Except for the OGs. And I have no more stories for you, and this episode is over. And if you want to be in the best headspace, what you're going to want to do is go to thefreakydeaky.com, and you're going to want to support the show one way or another, whether that be buying some merchandise, which is popping, and the best ever. Christian was just saying that someone at the airport was complimenting you beyond measure for this amazing hoodie that you're wearing right now.
Yeah, she almost couldn't take my order once I handed her a couple stickers. Because she was just checking out the stickers and talking about it. Specifically asked, do you sell that?
And you say, fuck yeah, we do.
Just scan that little barcode.
There you go. All your dreams will come true.
And then as I'm sitting there eating, I hear her talking about the stickers to
You're like, hell yeah.
her coworker.
Absolutely.
Saved another soul.
So let this person be a guide to you, and go either buy some merch. You can also support the show by becoming a producer or donating to the show. If you want to do that, we've put a little tiny button at the bottom of the website where you can take care of that, and you can donate up to, I believe, $1 million. So if that's you out there and you're a millionaire listening to this show and you're like, I really hope these guys keep doing this for a great deal of time, you're going to want to be... You're going to want to donate $1 million to support the show.
Do you think I wonder if donations are taxed?
I believe they probably are.
On the same level as
we're talking about the U.S. government. I'm sure the donations are taxed as high as they possibly can, especially on something like $1 million, which is going to come through at some point. I know there's rich people listening to this show, all right? Do I got to beg? Well, we're not trying to get the poor folks, all right? We're right there with you. We're not trying to entice the poor folks. If you are incredibly wealthy and you have $10 million and you want to just donate 1/10 of your net worth, let's say for tax purposes, you could probably write that off for next year, or for, I guess, this year we're in now. There you go. I gave you a solution, and now I just seem greedy. It's not for that. It's because we want to make cool videos and stuff.
Yeah, if you need a big tax break, donate to
We're the guys. All right, we're the guys. Don't be giving money to people that already have a lot of money. Look at all these other paranormal podcasts that do absolutely nothing for you. All right, they do nothing for you. They don't give you entertainment value. They tell you stories, all right? I guess we do the same. That's fine.
But we're entertaining.
At least there's entertainment here, all right? Do you know how stressful it is being someone that believes in everything, talking to someone that never believes in a single thing that's ever happened? It's incredibly stressful.
Never believes in a single thing that never happened. Most of the time, that's not quite... I mean, it's easy to label me that way, but most of the time, I'm like...
Based on evidence.
I just need you to come at the story from a non-believer place for a second and see what you see. It doesn't mean that you don't...
Do you see what I mean? I can't even get that sentence out without... he doesn't even believe the sentence, folks. This is it. 4 years, 4 or 5, whatever it's been now.
I mean, have you heard the stuff that comes out of your mouth? Sometimes it's hard to believe.
I have. It's wildly entertaining, and people enjoy it sometimes.
I recently started therapy because of our one TFD After Dark episode that traumatized me.
You think that one's bad, all right? The Incubus Succubus has to be recorded, all right? And that one's going to traumatize you 10 times more. It's just going to be really uncomfortable in this studio for a few minutes.
I just have a feeling it's not going to traumatize me as much as that one story.
Trauma. You are in for a wild ride then. After that, don't worry. I'll mellow it down a little bit, but I do have an Incubus Succubus episode that needs to be recorded.
Here's what I was... Because I've been thinking about it like every day since we recorded that. Because sometimes I deal with trauma too.
I see that.
Sometimes I can't keep myself in a good mental place. Maybe just some of the words, calm it down a little. Use a thesaurus and pick a word that quite doesn't hurt my soul.
Well, I got to be honest with you. When it comes to Incubus stuff, probably going to be a lot of penetration. Does that work for you? Or you want me to be like...
I love Incubus.
Wow. And I knew it's actually in the script, but that's not for now. We'll see you later. This episode is run on. This episode is brought to you by Tangents. Goodbye.
There's a man on the mic, he's got a lot to say. Claims he's cracked the code, found the only way. But every word he speaks, it crumbles, it falls like a house of cards in a hurricane squall. He doubts the moon, the stars, the ghosts in the hall. Says Bigfoot's a joke, no movement at all. But his stubborn pride, it's a losing game. Every theory he drops goes up in flames. Oh, Christian, king of the wrong. preaching loud, but you've been off all along. You're God's gift to creation, at least in your mind. But truth's not a treasure you'll ever find. Religion's a riddle you think you've cracked, but your stubborn ass hat just won't retract. You roll your eyes, you scoff at the devout, yet you've never even figured what faith's about. Oh, he's got his facts, or so he believes, but his logic's full of holes like a sinking sieve. From aliens to angels, he's got no clue, but that won't stop him from telling you. Oh, Christian, king of the wrong, preaching loud, but you've been off all along. You're God's gift to creation, at least in your mind. But truth's not a treasure you'll ever find. Religion's a riddle you think you've cracked, but your stubborn ass hat just won't rinse on. You roll your eyes, you scoff at the devout, yet you've never even figured what faith's about. Oh, he's got his facts, or so he believes, but his logic's full of holes like a sinking sieve. From aliens to angels, he's got no clue, but that won't stop him from telling you. Oh, Christian, the oracle's bane. Every call that you make is made in vain. You're God's gift to no one, just stuck in your lane, driving circles round wrong like a runaway train. So here's to the man with his skeptical creed, a prophet of errors, a sower of seeds. But we'll tune in again, cause we can't look away from the beautiful wreck you're bound to display. Oh, Christian, keep rolling that dice, cause being wrong about everything sure is nice.